Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming. Our 10th anniversary here. We thank you all for your continued support coming back year after year. All of our wonderful donors that make this possible, thank you and welcome. There's really no need to introduce Louise Penny. There's not a person in this room that does not know Louise Penny. We've all followed her as she's led us through these hair-raising, angst-ridden chases, diving into corruption, greed, hatred, avarice, envy, lust for power and money, crooked people, crooked governments, crooked companies, crooked police. What is it with you?
It's all from croissants. That was the starting point, and then everything else is crooked.
And when the world seems at its darkest, we're in the depths of despair, we've all followed as she's led us back to the safety and serenity of Three Pines. And now it's her turn. And we're glad that she has followed us back here to appear at the Nantucket Book Festival again. Louise Penny.
That was sweet. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Mindy Todd from WCA. Hi.
Yes, and Mindy.
And before we get into the books, Louise, I told you I was going to save this story for today. I didn't ask you this on the radio interview because I wanted to save this today. Please tell us the story of how you found your agent.
Oh, the start, because actually that's a great place to start because this was before, obviously, any of the books came out. It took me forever to write the book, and then it took me forever to get any interest at all. And everybody had turned down Still Life, which was the first book. And I thought, I clearly don't know what I'm doing. But I got an email because I had actually forgotten that I had entered Still Life in this wonderful contest. And if anyone here is an emerging writer, but certainly a crime writer, I suggest that you check out Crime Writers of America, but also, or Mystery Writers of America, but the Crime Writers Association in Great Britain has this wonderful award for Best Unpublished First Novel. Yeah, I know. So I had entered Still Life in it, and then I thought the deadline had passed and whatnot. But it hadn't, and I got this email saying that out of 800 entries worldwide, Still Life had been shortlisted. And when I regained consciousness, I told Michael that we have to go to this. And it was in the UK. And I knew that in that room in the UK for the award ceremony would be everyone I had been trying years to contact. They would all be in this one room. So off we went. And, I'm not the most out, and I was scared. And what I did, though, was I was a journalist, and this really helped me prepare, was I got in touch with the leading bookstores in the UK, and I said, now, who are the top agents representing crime writing? Because I knew that they would probably be there as well, and I didn't want to spend the time chatting up someone who turned out to be the waiter. Although if he was attractive, So I went around and they gave me the list, and as it boiled down to 3 names. So Michael and I went to the Crime Writers Association presentation. It was terrifying. The first name on the list was not at all interested in speaking to me. The second name on the list was drunk. And the third name on the list was not there. And then I lost the award. I know, it was one of those. So I went back to our hotel room and I curled into a little ball and I didn't want to leave because I thought that was the last hope. I thought this is it. My career, my dream has fallen off a cliff. But Michael's sister, who lives in the UK, said, look, this was in late November. There's a thing called, and maybe you've heard of it, it's a sale of goods, and it happens in private homes around Christmas time. And they bring in this case, it was an Afghan women's co-op. So they brought in goods that these women had made. They sell them, and then the profits go back to the co-op. So she said, come with us. It'll do you good, and frankly, you smell right now. So maybe you can shower and, we'll hose you down and get you into something nice and you can come with us. So I didn't want to, but I finally did. Michael said, let's go. So off we went. And I'm just not in the mood. But there was this beautiful pashmina. It was the most gorgeous blue, shade of blue. So I reach out for it, and this claw reaches out at the same time. So now, because we're both Anglo, I mean, I'm Canadian, but, might as well be Anglo, and she's very British. And so we're pretending it's not happening, right? So we're doing this for about 30 seconds. And then finally she says, who are you? And I said, well, my name's Louise Penny. That didn't mean anything. And she said the most amazing thing. She said, I have your name on a Post-it note on my computer. And I said, well, who are you? And it was the third name on the list. The only person in all of London I had to meet was the only person I spoke to at this private party. There must have been 150 people there. I spoke to one person, and it was the only one I had to meet. And I let go. I think it's possible I bought it for her. And she became my agent. Yeah. She was a little nutty. And because she's British, and I whenever I hear someone speak to me with a British accent, I hear an implied, you idiot. So it was a fraught relationship, as you can imagine.
And now here we are. Madness of Crowds was number 17 in the
Yes.
series. You said something in an interview that I thought was really interesting, talking about your book's murder mysteries. You said they're not really about murder. Instead, murder is a launching point to explore the issues Gamache and others struggle with.
Right.
That's how you look at it.
Is that how you would see it as well, the readers? Right, because I can't imagine you want a story that is rational and interesting and I hope riveting and maybe brilliant. But really, it's the relationships. It's the themes that and that certainly is what interests me the most. I consider the murder like the Trojan horse. That, you think it's one thing, the books, but in fact it allows all these other themes of belonging, of friendship, of love in all of its forms, and to explore those issues of the aching loneliness and then the great relief when you find a community, when you discover you're not alone.
Yeah. Let's talk about this book is set post-pandemic. Obviously, you wrote it during, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so what was your thought? I think you started the book not really wanting to mention the pandemic for quite a bit, right? And then sort of changed your mind on that. And it feels like we keep thinking we're seeing the end of the pandemic, right? And then another variant and another variant.
Right.
So we're kind of like actually hopeful that, this is really what is happening was like in your book, it is post-pandemic. But talk a little bit about how you wanted to weave the pandemic.
Well, what happened was I started, well, first of all, the pandemic happened, obviously, and everything shut down. I was, like everybody else, you're locked into your home, no place to go, nothing to do. I watched everything there was on Netflix twice and thought, because I wasn't supposed to, I hadn't scheduled to start writing. I hadn't scheduled myself to start writing for another couple of months. But then I thought, this is a great chance to write. So I sat down, but I thought the last thing, because the pandemic, particularly at the beginning, it was very traumatic because we didn't know how bad it was going to be. We didn't know what to do. Do you remember we were putting our groceries on the counter and keeping them there for 3 days, and we were told not to wear masks. And then we're told to wear masks, and it was very frightening. And I thought, the last thing I want to write about is the pandemic, and the last thing I certainly want to read about is the pandemic. So I'm not going to go there. And I understand that I read primarily for escape, and I suspect many people do. You don't want to read about a world that's even worse than the one we actually live in. So I started the book. I got about 2/3 of the way through, and I won't go into it in too much depth because there might be some people here who haven't read the book. But it's the broad strokes, and this isn't anything you wouldn't know by reading the back of the book. It's about a charismatic professor who has this theory about how to right the economic imbalance. That, pandemic aside, there's the haves and the have-nots. The schism is getting wider. The governments are becoming bankrupt. We have to do something if there's going to be money for the next generation. Healthcare isn't working, blah, blah, blah. Things are falling apart. We need to find money somehow. And she comes up with this theory on how to do it. And it is a horrific, malevolent theory. But it's spreading because people are afraid. And they think maybe it actually will work. So little by little, it begins to spread, and it begins to get converts and adherents, and it begins to gain momentum. So that was really what it was going to be about. It wasn't going to be about the pandemic, and it still isn't about the pandemic. But it occurred to me 2/3 of the way through that actually what she's spreading is a kind of an intellectual virus. So I thought, you know what, I have to talk about the pandemic. But what I would do is set it in a post-pandemic world. So people aren't struggling with it anymore. It's over. People aren't wearing masks. Everyone is still getting together. They're having parties that's set at Christmas time. So there is a sense of joy and relief. But as in with all the books, there is an echo. People discuss what happened in the pandemic. They don't ignore it. But everyone is safe, everyone is healthy.
Yeah. One of the things you said about the pandemic helped us rediscover the importance of kindness. Oh. And that's so true, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's, in so many things, I think. I just did an event in Chicago to support a center, a remarkable center called the Kovler Center, which supports victims of torture. Who've come to the United States to find, obviously, safety, but they need a lot of support, emotional and psychological and economic. And I did a panel discussion with 2 other people, and I met this, one was Melissa Fung and the other is Alida Black, and both are very strong human rights advocates. And we met because of the Afghan crisis. And we would never have met. And so out of every crisis, there is a gem. It's that they ring the bells that still can ring, forget your perfect offering. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. And there was a lot of light that came through the shattering experience of the pandemic.
This is book 17, as I mentioned.
Oh my God!
And you mentioned
it?
number 1. I mean, did you ever really think like how far this is going? And this really is one long story, right?
Right.
It's
well
not.
put.
I mean, the books stand alone, but it is one long story. The characters change, relationships change, right?
Yeah. No. Yeah. Thank you, Mindy. That's exact. And I think of it like that. I think of it as, one book with 17 quite long chapters. But no, I never thought. My initial thought was, because I'd written Still Life, obviously hoping it would be published, hoping it would be a series, because I like reading series books. But I really only thought 4 books ahead, and even that was very vague, in that I wanted to be a very clear sense of place, that there be no doubt that it's set not just in Canada, but in Quebec. And so I wanted to set each at a different season. So the first one was fall and then winter and so on and so forth. But I only thought 4 seasons ahead. And I remember when Teresa, crazy Teresa, the agent, called me up and she said, this was with Still Life, right? She said, Louise, the most wonderful thing has happened. I've sold 3 books. And I said, Teresa, that's fantastic. Like mine and who else's? She said, Louise, you idiot. they're all yours. And I thought, what the hell is that? I mean, honestly, it took me 45 years to write the first one. now she's committed me to write a book a year for at least 3 books. I thought this can't be done, and who would have thought 17 books out? And the 18th, I've just handed it in. We're doing the copy editing, so we're still working on it a little bit, but yeah, who would have thought I'd have that much murder?
And now do you have ideas going, I mean, do you see this, is this endless in your mind now, going, I can just keep on going?
I think so. The thing is, in terms of how people die and the why is the really interesting thing. But what I think will keep me coming back to the books is that I love the company of these characters, of these people.
Yeah.
I don't even think of them as characters.
Yeah.
They're so real to me. And my mother always thought, you know what, your imaginary life is not going to get you anywhere.
Wow. So speaking of that, these characters are very near and dear to your heart, and you guard them, but you have sold the rights to the TV series in the UK. And how do you feel about that?
Well, yes. I said no. I mean, I initially agreed to still life. I don't know if any of you have seen yeah. I know. So I thought, I'm never going to do that again. So I turned down every offer for years. And then I was approached by, and I felt at the time when I did Still Life that it should be a Canadian production company because I thought they will understand the themes and the setting and whatnot. But that turned out to be not necessarily true. But then I was approached by a company called Left Bank, and they're in the UK, and they're the ones who do The Crown. And they do a bunch of others, and they've won Academy Awards for, the head of Left Bank did The Queen. Do you remember that with Helen Mirren? And it's not like they do everything to do with royalty, but that happens to be 2 of them. And so it was a very impressive production company with very high values. But still, I met with them for 2 years. Every time I went to London, we would sit down and we'd have meetings, we'd have dinner, we'd have lunch, because it has to be a personal relationship. And finally, I agreed. I thought, if I'm ever going to do it, this is the company that would do it. And if I'm never going to do it, then if I can't agree to do it with Left Bank, then I'm never going to have it done. So I thought, let's just try one more time. And the results, to be fair, are mixed. I don't agree with a fair amount of what they did. They were very good. I said, you have to show me the scripts. I'm not one of the writers on it, but you have to show me the scripts. And they did, and I sent them back, and they said, thank you. But they listened to some of the stuff. But it's just so interesting, and I don't know. I have such a sense of ownership of these characters and a need to protect them. And I don't know, honestly, I don't know how much of that is reasonable and how much is unreasonable, because a TV show has to breathe its own life into these characters and into the stories. And so I don't know how much I should let go and how much I need to control. And it's something I struggle with. And I know that it was frustrating for them too. And so the big thing was, of course, who are they going to cast for Gamache? And they had to get that right. And they sent me all sorts of proposals, and God bless them, they listened to me when I said no, no, no. And then they came up with Alfred Molina. And I said yes.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. And to be fair, he's fantastic. I've only seen the first 2 episodes. And there are things I would never have agreed to had they actually cared what I thought. But Molina is superb.
How many listen to the books on tape? Okay, so you know the voice, right? Okay, so Robert Bathurst is the voice for the audiobooks.
But he didn't start off.
Oh, he didn't
Right,
start
it was Ralph Cosham, right?
Ah, okay. So talk about that because I think that's tough if you love an author and then you've got somebody reading the book that just doesn't do it for you, you know? I mean, but you're happy with Robert.
Well, I don't listen to the audiobooks because I have my own very clear, their voices in my head. There. You know what a psychiatrist would say. But I do, I understand, because it's important to have the voice of the character, so I know who they are, so I don't listen at all. In fact, when Ralph Cosham, who started off, I think he did the first 6 or 7 of the books, I was sent the audiobook of Still Life, and you can imagine, I mean, I couldn't believe any of this was happening. And there was the audiobook, so I tore it open and I put it in. I think it was on a CD, or it doesn't matter. And I listened for about 30 seconds, and I had to turn it off because it was just upsetting. He had it right, I'm sure he had it right, but I just couldn't, I couldn't allow that to influence my own thinking. But yes, and then the transition. How many of you have had the transition from Ralph to it was hard. Yeah. I'm not surprised, because it becomes the voice of Gamache, I would imagine. And the reason we changed, and Ralph became a personal friend, and he was nominated for Best Male Audio Reader. And the awards, he lived in Washington, and I was in Quebec, and he said, I'm up for this award, and it's in New York, and I knew he was up for it. Will you be my date? Aww. My wife says you can be my date, and Michael said, yeah, you can go down. So Ralph was in his tux, and I was in my glad rags, and he turned to me, and his thing came up, his category came up, and he grabbed my hand, and he looked at me, and he said, I want to win. Up until that moment, he was being very cool, nonchalant, I want to win. Yeah. And I thought, I don't care whose name they call out, I'm getting up there and I'm grabbing that award for Ralph. And thankfully, he won. But if you ever see pictures of it, this is his award, it's not mine, right? So he's up there and he's smiling, and there's me in the background. I'm not even supposed to be on the stage, but I got so excited, I ran up with him.
That's funny. Another State of Terror with Hillary Rodham Clinton. What was that like?
Yes. That was a pandemic book. Had we not had the pandemic, neither Hillary nor I would have the time to do it. But we were personal friends beforehand. And one of our agents, thought that it was a good idea that we at least think about writing a book together. And so they approached us, and I said, I think I've never written a book together with anyone. I don't know how that's going to work. I don't show my manuscripts to anyone until I've written 3 or 4 versions of, versions of it, drafts. So I don't know how it's going to be to write, because my first drafts are marred. They're awful. No, they're really soft and smelly. They're terrible. So now I have to show it to someone, and not just someone, but to Hillary, right? And she's going to know just how bad I am. And Hillary's reaction was, I think that would work. I think we could do it, but I'm afraid it's going to ruin our friendship. And I thought, how mean are you planning to be? Exactly. That doesn't sound good at all. But what was great was, it was a shame we couldn't get together. We really wanted to be in the same room and toss around ideas and stuff. But I was up at the lake house isolating in place, and she was in Chappaqua. So we would FaceTime and toss around ideas. What about this and what about that? But it worked out really well because we weren't in the same room. We couldn't kill each other. And she brings some very specific skill set and broad and the depth of knowledge, but it's not my knowledge. So I'm not going to argue with her about, what's going to happen in Afghanistan or the Pakistani, foreign policy. But I know how to write fiction and crime novels, and she's never done that before. So we each had our skill set, and we respected each other. And so that, a lot of respect.
So it was a good experience.
It was a very good experience. It was an excellent experience, in fact. I was surprised by how much fun it was.
I want to read a review by a reader. This one caught my eye because I think this reader speaks a lot what other readers think. You should never start a Louise Penny book expecting a normal mystery. Her books totally transcend the genre. She incorporates philosophy, art, poetry, and politics into her stories. While some series get stale after a certain number of books, if anything, Penny's is getting better. And this counts as one of my favorite books of 2021.
Oh, that's wonderful.
sweet?
Is that for the madness of crowds?
I was looking at reader reviews. I don't know if it was on
Right.
Amazon or Goodreads or something.
But it was for madness. It was the latest book.
Oh, was it? Oh, you didn't.
No, I don't know. I don't know. I haven't read that before. I'm just wondering.
I thought it was Madness of Crowds she was talking.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, yes.
It was for madness.
Yes.
The madness of crowds.
Yeah.
Am I not speaking properly?
Or I'm not listening properly. Yes.
It's for madness of
For
crowds.
madness
Right.
of crowds, yes. But so talk a little bit about that. I mean, is that just sort of come to you naturally, or do you purposely kind of, I got to, weave some of this or that in there as she's talking? I mean, what's the process?
I have, each book has a notebook, and it's segregated. So I think there are 5 different sections, and I put the tabs. So I write different. One is character, one is quotes, just random quotes that I pick up. The story development. And so as the year goes by, when I'm not actually writing, but I'm beginning to think about the next book, I'm writing down different notes, different ideas, different thoughts. And I think of it as a pointillist painting, in that you get this idea and that idea and this, and little by little, a sort of an image begins to form, a whole begins to form. But there's still spaces, the light between the dots. Because that's the key, is that it has to be, for me, I have to be able to see broad strokes, what the themes are, what the characters are going to do, who the murderer is and why. But that there's all sorts of breathing space in between, and that's where the fun stuff happens. And so I don't, again, it's trying to find that balance between having enough structure and control over what's happening so that I can keep moving forward when I get lost, but not so much that it doesn't allow for the grace notes.
Gamache was inspired by your husband, right?
Right.
So what about the other characters? Do people come to go, oh, I know who Ruth is, or I know, I mean, there is a little bit of people you actually know in these characters, right?
I think it's such a, I mean, it's particularly when my publisher or journalists come to the village where I live, which is in Knowlton, Quebec. And they come and they quickly realize that I have no imagination. They see, oh my God, this is Three Pines, and there's Ruth, and there's Claire, and there's Gabri, and there's Olivia. It's like, holy God, this is a documentary. This is nonfiction. It's not quite like that, but it's pretty close, And I'm blessed. I know I'm blessed to live in a community like that where there are deep roots and profound friendships, and people care for each other, and people have their oddities and different characteristics, and there's some falling out at times, but we all come back together, and there's acceptance. And who doesn't yearn to just be accepted for who you are? And for your, so what if my opinions differ from yours? We can always find that common ground, and that's the kind of community that I live in, and I choose to live there. And I'm lucky. I spent many, many years of my life looking for home, yearning for home, and feeling very lonely and very out of step, and feeling like I was on an island looking at the mainland, and just yearning to get across to the mainland. And I found that in my village. And my books are love letters to where I live, to the people who are my friends, and to that profound sense of belonging. There's I've quoted it before, it's from Virginia Woolf, Orlando. She starts it, and I'm not going to get this quote exactly right, but she starts the book. Orlando is about a character named Orlando, not surprisingly, who has lived many, many lifetimes in many different guises, many different personalities, a man, a woman, rich, poor, different backgrounds culturally. But Virginia Woolf starts it off by saying, through all the years, through all the lifetimes, Orlando was looking for only one thing. And it wasn't power, it wasn't riches, it wasn't even love. What Orlando wanted was company. And I understood that. And that's what Three Pines is about. It's about company, about not being alone.
I know there's probably questions in the audience, but before you give us your question, no spoilers, please, for folks who haven't.
That's tomorrow morning.
That's tomorrow morning. So, and I understand there are a few tickets left if you want to get in on the spoiler action tomorrow morning.
I think that's a great idea, too, the
Yes,
spoilers.
yeah.
Because that's what you can't, obviously, in a situation like this, you can't say, why did you do this, or why did you have the alien invasion, or whatever. Because you don't want to give anything away. But tomorrow morning,
Yeah.
the assumption is anyone who comes to that, you've already read all the books or you're warned, because people are going to ask all the questions that you couldn't ask for 20 years.
There you go. So who has a question? Oh, we got two back there. So how about the lady in the back with the sunglasses, and then we'll go to you, sir. Go ahead.
I love the Path to Wisdom, and I actually have it written on my wall in my office.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Path to Wisdom?
Oh, the 4 sentences?
Yes. How did that come about? Because that's a recurring theme in your novels.
Yes, she's asking about the 4 sentences that Gamache quotes often to new agents about the path to wisdom. And they are, and I always forget one. So I know, yeah. So I'm not very wise, obviously. It's, I'm sorry, I was wrong, I need help. I don't know. How ironic is that? I don't know. Thank you. Oddly enough, thank you for asking that question. The first time I met Michael, my husband, the man who would become my husband, he clearly wasn't at the time, he was opening a meeting. And normally when you open a meeting, a committee meeting or whatever, you go through the minutes of the last meeting and who accepts them and whatnot. But he opened the meeting by saying, I just want to take a moment and quote the 4 sentences that lead to wisdom. But really? Who does that? And everybody's looking at each other. And he said them, paused, and then went on with the meeting. And I thought, there's a remarkable man. And he was. So I've never forgotten that. So I wanted to ascribe that to Gamache.
All right, so you had a question right there.
I was curious about the idea that you have of, I don't know if you say that it could occur to anyone, but that what leads someone to murder is the curdling of feelings. And I was just curious how you developed that or where that came from.
This is, thank you for that. This is Gamache's theory that in order that obviously a gun or a knife or whatever is the weapon, but the thrust comes from an emotion that has gone bad. And so because he happens to be quite in tune with emotions, he's able to sort of trace back, find the person whose emotion has gone rancid. The fact is that I'm a recovering alcoholic for 28 years now. I haven't had a drink in 28 years. And I joined a 12-step program. And that was one of the teachings in it, is that, that it's a disease of the emotions. And that if your perceptions can get skewed, and then that over time can turn into something really malevolent And sometimes you turn it in on yourself, and sometimes you turn it outward on others and try to destroy others. And we've, if you've ever been around an active alcoholic, you know how manipulative and ugly they can be. And so I just sort of assumed that if alcoholics do that, then other people do as well. And yeah, you get a bad emotion over time. It's going to prompt someone to do something that is unrecoverable.
Anybody over on this side? Yeah, go ahead, right back here.
I'm just thinking one of the tabs in your notebook must be food. Does that just come?
It's about food.
Foods that you enjoy, or it's just that's the best part.
Oh. Oh, she's asking about food and how that came about. And when I write books, it's so much fun. I have to tell you, every day I wake up and I know how lucky I am. I write with a pile of poetry books here and a pile of cookbooks here. How wonderful is that? But this goes back to what I was saying earlier about a very keen sense of place. And I thought that cuisine can be part of that. And I also wanted the reader to not be a voyeur, but to feel as though you're actually walking beside the characters, that you are in the scene. And in order to do that, I wanted to engage all the senses. And I thought that cuisine was a good way to do that, so that you taste the food, you smell the croissants, you come in from the cold and you have a nice hot chocolate. So that's where that came from, that sense. And also the sense of community, of sitting around the table, that we're all together, we're breaking bread together. So it serves all sorts of purposes.
Anybody else? Yeah, right here.
Just a comment, your website is so enjoyable.
Oh.
Thank you for allowing us into your community.
Oh, what a lovely thing to say.
Website
Thank
is
you.
enjoyable, she says, yeah.
Thank you.
Real quick, I just want to ask you, do people actually come to your town looking, go, I want to visit Three Pines? I mean,
Yes.
Yeah.
Who here?
That's funny. All right, we've all been there, okay. I saw another hand go up over here somewhere. Yeah, go ahead, right here.
Did you write poetry before you wrote narrative? Because it dawned on me one day when I was reading Ruth's wonderful poem that you wrote it. Like a ton of words. I was like, Ruth didn't write that.
But thank you. The fact is, I don't write the poetry. If you look at the front of the books, there are acknowledgments, permissions from the poetry. And a lot of Ruth's poetry is Margaret Atwood. Yeah. Obviously, clearly done with her permission, because you don't want to piss off Margaret Atwood. In fact, in Canada, it's against the law.
All right, another
And there's another poet there, too, who's quoted, and you can get their books.
okay, right here. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Okay, well, piggybacking on the food comment, will there be a Three Pines cookbook?
Oh, will there be a Three Pines cookbook?
Well, we sort of tossed around the idea back and forth. Now, I'm going to be absolutely honest with you. One of the reasons why I was a little resistant to it, but I'm a little bit more open to it now, is that the books were initially marketed as cozy crimes. And there's a place for cozy crimes. I read Agatha Christie. I love them. But it's also shorthand for superficial. So, and a lot of the cozy crimes have, knitting patterns and cookbooks and things like that. And that's great, but that's just simply not what the books are. So I've sort of tried to right the ship, and I think it has. So I think now we're more open to a cookbook. There have been little ones. There's the my U.S. publisher, when The Nature of the Beast came out, put together a slim volume of recipes called The Nature of the Feast. And I'm not sure if it's available or how you could find it. And my Quebec publisher has put out recipes as well.
Yeah, right here.
What are you reading currently?
What are you reading currently?
Oh, what am I reading? Do you know what I'm reading? I am reading the Robert Harris Cicero trilogy. Yes, I've fallen down the Cicero hole. I've got a bit of a crush on Cicero.
Yeah.
Yes, it's fascinating. It's really interesting.
Okay, right here, ma'am. Yeah.
So Gamache is getting older, and I know that Renmarie might not want him to continue being the head of the Sûreté. Are you thinking, I was thinking in your last book that you might be thinking about a next generation, and Lacoste might be someone you were thinking of focusing on.
Yeah, Gamache is getting older, and she's wondering, will
Will
he be replaced with somebody younger? I
With
don't know.
Lacoste or someone else. I don't know. What do you think? Do you want him to retire?
His mind is still strong, Louise.
Well, the awkward thing is, as you may have noticed, is that he is not actually getting older. I am. There is a sort of slight disconnect here. And I think, you know, if you're willing to go along with it, I am too. You know, it is a little, it's, you know, it does not bear much scrutiny, the timeline. But I can't see, honestly, I'm not interested in writing about anyone else except this group of characters and their interrelationship.
Get one more question. Yes, you, ma'am, right there.
How does your town feel about you incorporating them into your books? I just keep wondering, how does that work for you?
I didn't get the question.
How does the town feel
how
about
does the town- wow,
about
yes.
me incorporating them into the books? I was worried about that too. And the fact is that my town, Knowlton, isn't Three Pines. I mean, it's much larger. If you come there, you wouldn't say, "Oh my God, it's Three Pines" necessarily. I mean, you all who visited it wouldn't say this is exactly how we see. It's close. To be fair, they're actually really supportive. Thank God, because that would have been very uncomfortable and very awkward. But they're supportive. And Knowlton, went through a difficult time, and so it's great that people come in and they spend money and they stay there and they try to find open restaurants. And so yeah, it's been a good experience all around. And we're adding to the library a new annex to the library, and I'm actually thanks to all of you, I'm funding it and naming it after Michael, my husband. But we've got one of the townspeople wrote a play about it, so I'm going to be in it, and that's in July. Oh, it's awful. I think it's a surreptitious Alzheimer's test.
Ooh.
I just want to see how much can she memorize
Oh, boy.
before the ship goes down.
Louise Penny, always so much fun to talk to you. We love having you here at the BookFest.
Is it over?
Yeah, I know, our time is up. Look at that. I know. Are you signing books?
I'm signing
Yeah,
books.
signing books. You'll be
if
signing books
anyone
right out
would like.
there,
Yes.
so-
Thank
so,
you.
yes.
And Mindy, thank you. You're fantastic.
no problem.
For sure. Thank you. And thank you all. Thank you so much.